wonderful. Guys, ooh, I believe. Well, the title of my talk today is Unity Principles, what they are, where they came from, and how to use them. As Jody said, I've been studying these principles for 35 years, so you know, you'd think I could walk on water by now, right? Well, guess what? I can, but only in the winter. Shoot. Working on that. So I think it's good to start out the year just refreshing ourselves about unity principles, because sometimes we take them for granted and we don't really think about them. Unless you're new or you're really familiar with the 5 basic principles, you probably can't rattle them off at will, and I provided a card for you. If you came in and you didn't get one of those cards with the 5 principles on it, just raise your hand and Judy will bring one to you. Or you can pick one up as you go out. Joyce here. Yeah. Okay, come in. We'll also put them on the screen, but I wanted you to have these cards just for reference on an ongoing basis. So let's look at what these principles are, and we'll say them together. And Deanna's going to put them up on the screen one at a time, and we'll say them together, and then she'll just wait a second or two, and to let it sink in, you might want to say it to yourself again when it's, after we've said it aloud. So here's the first one. There is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and as my life, God the good. Okay, number 2. Our essence is of God, therefore we are inherently good. The God essence called the Christ was fully expressed in Jesus. Number 3. We are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. Number 4. Through prayer and meditation, we align our heart-mind with God. Denials and affirmations are tools we use. Number 5. Through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth we know. As you probably know, these ideas are not unique to unity. Where did Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the founders of Unity, get these principles? Well, when the Fillmores married in 1881, they began exploring different theologies, and particularly a new religious lay movement known as New Thought. Some of you may have heard of New Thought, some not. It was the basis of the Unity movement. And these groups within the New Thought were exploring progressive Christian perspectives based on Jesus' teachings. And New Thought has quite an interesting family tree, if you will. There are 2 main progenitors, or I guess they're down here, roots. One is a man named Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. Anybody heard of Phineas? Right, a few people have. Okay, we're going to talk about him. And the other was Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I'm sure you've heard of him. And this New Thought movement was organized as a national movement in 1886 to 88 by Emma Curtis Hopkins. You may have heard of her, so let's see who these people are. Well, briefly, Phineas Quimby started out as a watchmaker in Maine, and he became a healer. And he kind of went through 3 phases of healing. And the first one he went through was based on hypnosis, because he heard a disciple of Anton Mesmer talk about hypnotism. And he started using hypnotism to heal people. And he was amazingly effective. And so then he kind of moved into mental healing, because he realized that people's diseases or conditions were based on errors of the mind. And so he would interview people, and then through his intuition, he would figure out what beliefs, what false beliefs they were holding that were creating these diseases or conditions. And he would replace those with his own thoughts. And now you think, how did he do that? Well, he knew the secret that we are all one in mind, in the one mind of spirit. And so he used his own thought and replaced those error thoughts within within the people he worked with. But then he advanced to healing through spiritual truth. And because he knew of this connection in one mind, he knew that his own realization of their spiritual perfection would manifest within that person. And he healed thousands of people. It was amazing. He said he was communing with that infinite power that he called wisdom with a capital W, which was what we would call the Christ mind, which is how Jesus did his healings. He had that high spiritual realization. And so New Thought adopted this method of healing. As you know, in unity, that's the way that we pray. We know that perfection and wholeness and the truth of the person that we're praying for. So the other pillar of New Thought was Ralph Waldo Emerson. That he was a leading light and a great intellectual in the transcendental movement in New England. And this was the 1800s also. He wrote of spiritual laws, such as the law of compensation, which basically means what you put out comes back to you. And he wrote things like, as a man thinks, so is he. That kind of sounds familiar. And his essay, The Oversoul, states ever so eloquently that within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. So then Emma Curtis Hopkins came along a little later. She had been studying Christian Science, and she broke away from Mary Baker Eddy to form the New Thought movement. So she took these things that she learned from Quimby and Emerson, who of course learned them from a lot of other places, but we won't try to count them all. And she began the New Thought movement, which integrated Quimby and the Transcendentalists and the Bible. They were all very Bible-based, but metaphysically Bible-based. Eastern spiritual ideas, that was a part of it. And mysticism. Emma Curtis Hopkins was known for her mysticism. In fact, she wrote her magnum opus was a book on high mysticism. So more about Emma in just a minute. Back to the Fillmores. Charles had a very successful business in real estate going for a while, but then because of an economic downturn, he had to leave that business, and then Myrtle contracted tuberculosis. And so that was not good. And upon recommendation of a friend, they went to hear this lecture by someone called Dr. E.B. Weeks, who happened to be a student of Emma Curtis Hopkins. And during that lecture, Myrtle took hold of the idea that because she was a child of God, she did not inherit illness. And through prayer and meditation and affirmation, she healed herself of tuberculosis. And that was very inspiring, of course, to Charles, who then began using these principles to heal himself of some childhood injuries that he'd had that left him with some disabilities. And he was successful, and people started hearing about this. And you know, when someone heals himself of tuberculosis, you just don't go up, you know. So they eventually, Charles and Myrtle, went to Chicago to study with Emma Curtis Hopkins. And they studied the spiritual ideas that she had developed in New Thought. And they also studied a little Christian Science and Theosophy. And their library eventually held books, Eastern texts, such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Philosophy, Legend and Theories of Buddhists, and the Light of Asia. And they were also influenced by Swami Vivekananda, who was a Hindu, and he had come to America. He was really the one who introduced Hindu philosophy to America. And he spoke at the Parliament of World Religions about religious tolerance and universal acceptance. And so, which the Fillmores attended. And so you can see where they got our idea of one God, many paths. That's a basic part of our philosophy. We don't say any one path is correct. And Quimby, he was really the healer of, that's where we got our healing tradition. And he was called the father of New Thought, and Emma Curtis Hopkins was called the mother of New Thought. And she was very much into the mother aspect of God. And that's probably where we got that. You know, we always say, thank you, Mother, Father, God. We know that God is not one gender or the other. And so we owe a big debt to Emma Curtis Hopkins, all of those people. The three main organizations, just so you know, under New Thought were was Unity, founded by the Fillmores, of course, and then Religious Science, which was my tradition before I came here, came out of the same thing. That was founded by Ernest Holmes. And then Divine Science, which is founded by Melinda Kramer and Nona Brooks. And also Emma Curtis Hopkins taught Harriet Emily Cady, who wrote Lessons in Truth. And that book was adopted by the Fillmores as one of their cornerstone texts of unity. So Emma Curtis Hopkins became known as the teacher of teachers. She taught all of those people. So, let's see. So, the object of all of this was really to discover and convey universal truths, and as well as to provide a way of practical spiritual principles that we could use in our life to be more healthy, to be more abundant, you know, to be happy. So I'm going to go through those principles again, and we'll talk a little bit about how we use these principles. How do we do that to make our lives more happy and fulfilled and abundant. So, Deanna, can you go back to the first principle, please? There we go. There is only one presence and one power active as the universe and as my life, God the good. This is the foundation of unity, really, and the foundation of a lot of at least the esoteric versions of the main religions. This idea was confirmed by mystics who had spiritual realizations and really saw the truth directly, such as Buddha and Jesus. So unity teaches there is one God, one universal consciousness or presence, and whatever you want to call it, Dr. Ernest Holmes called it the thing itself. Always like that. And the inherent nature of the thing itself is good. It's life-affirming and positive and supportive and creative. It's all-powerful, all-knowing, and ever-present. Never judges, and it always affirms. Well, this is a little departure from some of the traditional religious teachings. Now, the problem is that because of this always affirming, supportive nature of the universe, if we have negative or limiting thoughts, the universe says, okay, yes. And so oftentimes we have beliefs that we developed even when we were kids or through society. And Jesus said even, it's done unto you as you believe. Boy, is that true, you know? You believe you don't deserve something? Okay, then you don't. You know, you believe that you're not good enough? Well, okay, you're not. Well, so that's why we change our thinking, change our life. And so I'd like to tell you a little story that really illustrates this belief thing. Very, you'll see it's quite, maybe you've heard this story. It came out of a famous case that was, it was really brought out to the public by a psychologist named Bruno Klopfer. I was pronounced that right, Klopfer. I think it was back in the 50s. There was a man named Wright, and he had advanced cancer of the lymph nodes. And he had exhausted all standard treatments, and he had tumors the size of oranges throughout his body. Well, he heard about this new exciting drug that was supposedly, could heal cancer. It was called Cribiazin, and he begged his doctor to let him try this, because he didn't have long to live. And the doctor kind of was hesitant because it didn't qualify for those people who were getting it because they thought he was going to die within a couple days. And he kept begging, and so finally the doctor injected him with this Cribiazin. And the doctor, figured this was Friday, figured that by Monday, he would be dead. Well, he had a surge of healing, and within like 10 days, his doctors could find no cancer within his body. And then a couple months later, there were some reports that came out that Cribiazin didn't work for cancer of the lymph nodes. Bam, he was back in the hospital. And his cancer returned. And so his doctor had an idea, and he said, okay, it really is, very effective for cancer, but some of it something happened to it in shipment, so it wasn't effective. So I'm going to give you this new version that's very powerful, and this should really help. So he gave him a placebo. It wasn't the drug at all. Well, the guy was just healed. And he, on Monday, he was out of bed. The tumors were half the size, and he left the hospital 10 days later, supposedly cancer-free. Well, that's not the end of the story. 2 months later, the AMA came out saying Provisin was not effective at all for cancer. And poor Mr. Wright died within 2 days. So, wow, yeah. That shows you how powerful our beliefs are. I mean, wow. So take that to heart and just know that you're strong, healthy, and don't listen to all the negativity out there. So that was a very, in fact, there are many cases with placebos where people believe in the effect of it, and they do tests now where they give people placebos or the real thing, and oftentimes the placebo people get better. So the Hawaiian kahunas, just for one group, and one group of teachers, they suggest very strongly that everyone on a regular basis just frequently think about their lives and visualize what they want to have happen, and what they want for their lives. And so that way you can control some of all of those contradictory thoughts and wishes and fears that are running around in your mind that just confuse your higher self. You have to be clear about what you want because the universe says yes. That's very powerful. So what do we do in unity? We use meditation. That can kind of clear your mental field and help you quiet down so you can hear your guidance. We use prayer that helps us develop our really it helps us to develop our spiritual realization, but and also to know the truth. And we also use visualization and affirmation because that helps direct our thoughts so that we're not all over the place. So meditation and prayer and affirmations and visualization are what we use. Sorry, I should have had her keep going there, but there we go. Through prayer and meditation, we align our heart mind with God. Denials and affirmations are tools we use. In case you aren't familiar with the denial part, that's where we just deny the false appearance, deny that it has any power over us, and affirm the truth that God is all powerful and that God works through us. So if we really believe all this, how would that affect our interactions, say, with other people? Well, the Eye of the Storm book that we're studying says no one and nothing is against you. So if we accept principle number one, that we're all one, that's true. That's true. No, it can't be otherwise. No one and nothing is against you. And if it looks like someone or something is against you, that means that you have a little healing to do in your own consciousness. And let's see, 5, through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth we know. So this is the little tricky part. We have to take action. We can't just sit around like lumps expecting God to do miracles for us, because God works through us. We have to take responsibility. That's maybe why some people kind of shy away from new thought, because I have to take responsibility for my life. But I have realized that that is so positive, because when I have seen things in my own life that I've created that I don't like. I know I can change it. I know I have the power to change it. And that is so uplifting, and it's a wonderful principle to follow. So, I talked about how the thing itself has to work through us, and so we need to be clear, visualize what we want, and affirm the truth. And, I just know that these principles work. That's the bottom line. They work. So I will close with namaste and acknowledge the Christ within all of us.
Namaste.